Too often we see creators hand off their characters to big companies so that they can make TV shows and movies with their creations, and sometimes it works out, but most of the time it's a disaster, and we have seen a lot of Japanese creations be taken by Western companies and completely ruined when being adapted into a live action or a movie, but the company behind Ultraman is refusing to let that happen to their character, as they've vowed to grow their fan base without making changes for specific regions of people. I have a couple of different things that I want to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month or supporting via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. So I wanted to start off with this Bounding into Comics article, and it says the Subaraya Productions CEO vows to grow Ultraman fanbase without making changes for Western audiences. In order to compete on the world stage, we need to make use of Japan's identity. With the company's Ultraman franchise slowly beginning to make its proper debut into the wider world following years of licensing trouble, the production CEO has vowed to grow the hero's fan base without making changes to its sense of self for Western audiences, asserting that in order to compete on the world stage, we need to make use of Japan's identity and Japaneseness as a strong point in our stories. It says he outlined his vision for the future of Ultraman during an interview with Yahoo Japan, published on December 27th. So yes, this article did initially go up a couple of days ago, but I still wanted to talk about it because I still think that it makes a lot of fair points. Asked by the site editor if the franchise would be entering a new era of Ultraman that is different from the past, he replied, "We are developing a different type of Ultraman. What will change is not the shape or form of Ultraman, but the content and nature of the work. It is possible to create a work that has a message that is easy for children to understand, and a universal work that will move and satisfy adults," he continued, according to a machine translation of the interview. "That's what I'd like to create with Ultraman. However, the details will be announced a little later. In the meantime, we will continue to produce works other than Ultraman, and the future of the company is to use new technologies to create new original works." Now, a giant reason why I like Japanese entertainment, whether it's anime and manga or video games, is because I like seeing different views of the world, different takes on fantasy and superheroes, and Japanese creators have done a stellar job at creating new characters and stories, and they've done a stellar job at listening to what consumers want. That is why their industries are so successful. Look at manga versus Western comics. There is a massive difference in how consumers are feeling about the industries, the content coming out of them, and their success overall. Previously, in a situation not unlike that which formerly plagued the Macross series, Ultraman's licensing rights were at the center of an ownership dispute between Subaraya Productions, who created and produced the franchise, and Chayo Productions, a Thailand-based studio which has helped the former produce the Ultraman movie, The Six Ultra Brothers vs. the Monster Army. It says, though, scrolling down, in 1976, Chayo Productions founder and president claimed that prior to his death, the son of the late Ultraman creator and Godzilla co-creator had given him the full rights to the Ultraman franchise outside of Japan in an exchange for a financial loan. Though Subaraya Productions maintained that the document, which contained a number of errors including the misnaming of each series under contention, was a forgery, the apparent fixation of Noboru's personal seal to the contract led both Japanese and Thai courts to legally recognize the claim to the series. So yes, as it says, it definitely had a problem for many, many years when it came to ownership, who owned it, who had the rights to it, but it says in 2006, Subaraya Productions mounted a new legal campaign against them, suing the latter for copyright infringement and plagiarism over their creation of original original Ultraman characters. Eventually, following a series of ever-escalating appeals and countersuits, Tsuburaya Productions was awarded full rights to the series in 2019, a ruling which allowed the company to begin properly licensing and releasing their works outside of their home country. So yes, as it says, they have had a lot of legal problems over the years, but back in 2019 they were awarded full rights to the series, so now they can finally start thinking about the future, what they want to do with the characters they own, what they want to do with these stories that they have at their disposal. But eventually, Tsukagoshi moved to explain his production philosophy towards expanding Ultraman's presence on a global scale, particularly in Western markets, saying, "I have been thinking about the content of films, whether it's an action blockbuster about heroes or a general drama. It's based on personal conflicts and growth. On the other hand, Japanese and Asian films have had different ideas and concepts. One of them is the way we relate to nature, community, and society. In other words, the idea of coexistence. We Japanese are a country blessed with nature, surrounded by the sea and mountains, and we have grown up working together in this environment. This is the message that characterizes our works." I think that it's perfectly fine that they want to capture the attention of Western audiences because ultimately they're a company and they want to make as much money as possible, but when you start changing things around here and there, projects lose the uniqueness that made them popular in the first place, and they should want to avoid that. I do also agree with them saying that Japanese work has its own unique identity, and they should want to keep using that and not lose the characteristics their work has had in the past. In terms of the messaging Japanese shows and works highlight, it's not that certain groups of people are bad and they don't go around denigrating one group of people to raise up another. They don't go around painting people as villains for their viewpoints, which Western work does now, and that is a giant reason why Western work is kind of failing, especially compared to a lot of the work Japanese creators are releasing. It says, though, scrolling down, that recognizing that there are a number of cultural standards in the West, especially in Hollywood, he then told him that rather than change Ultraman in an attempt to garner more mass appeal, he believed that there was a chance of our own unique works to be accepted around the world, even in the form of collaboration with Hollywood. The CEO then adamantly declared, from a Western perspective, most of the world's popular Japanese characters are already being made into films by Hollywood major studios and global media groups. However, Ultraman is not one of them. Just imagine Western writers getting their hands on Ultraman, making a live-action Ultraman series. It would probably be an abomination. So many series and movies like live-action Cowboy Bebop and Death Note have released and were terrible, and there's so many others in the works like Avatar: The Last Airbender and One Piece, and we've seen how terrible Death Note and Cowboy Bebop went. Let's look at Cowboy Bebop for a second. It is currently sitting at a 47% critic score and a 58% audience score, and these numbers have fluctuated a little bit, but not very much, and ultimately Netflix decided to cancel this series because they didn't see the appeal there with people, and they didn't see it being successful. They didn't see it making them money. And look at Death Note. Death Note was absolutely terrible. It's sitting at a 38% critic score and a 23% audience score. Clearly the people that are getting their hands on all of these different anime properties and they're turning them into live actions, whether it's series or movies, they haven't been doing a good job, and it's no wonder why we see this CEO say, yeah, well, maybe in the future we think about an Ultraman project by some sort of major Hollywood studio, but right now is definitely not the time. They even went on to say, Ultraman may be the last big IP left in Japan, and we have received many offers from overseas companies, but if we do the same thing in Hollywood when we go out into the world, Ultraman will be buried among the many hero characters. In order to compete on the world stage, we need to make use of Japan's identity as a strong point in our stories, and this is the way I want to present the Ultraman brand. This will lead to the creation of powerful works on a different level. And I really like all of these statements. He is sticking by the character that they've created. He is sticking by the idea of maybe doing new, unique things in the future, but they're not basically selling out to Hollywood and the idea that they can get a giant live action series or a movie, whatever the case may be. Because he's saying that they did get a lot of offers for Ultraman, but ultimately they decided to pass on them, which I personally really like. I have a lot of respect for Sugagoshi here. He is definitely defending the work that they've created in the past, the characters that they have, and ultimately only time will tell. Maybe in the future, in a couple of years, they'll decide to go ahead with some Ultraman projects, but I really like a lot of the statements that are here, and I definitely have a lot of respect for this company and also this CEO. But that's all that I really had to talk about in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.